We are going to be talking about a very related topic today. It's one of the reasons why we had Karen come. With the beginning of the new year, we're going back to the basics. So you guys go into the new year. How many of you guys made New Year's resolutions? There's like less and less people who put their hands up every year, right? Like, why do we make those? We just break them, right? As you think about the new year and what that might look like, what we want to do as a church is to kind of guide the decisions you're going to make and how you spend your time, what you do during that year, by going back to the basics and looking at what we're called to do as Christians. We're going to focus on 4 things for the next 4 weeks. Today, we're talking about care for children. Okay? Care for children. No coincidence with the announcements you heard today. Next week, we're going to talk about care for the poor, what that looks like, how we already do it, how we can get more involved in doing that. The week after that, we're going to be talking about caring for prisoners. Same thing, what we can do and what we can continue to do and what we already do as a church. And then the 4th week, we're going to be talking about care for the lost and the obligation, the joyful obligation we all have to do that and examples of that and what that looks like. But today, the kids. Caring for children. Now, these are, yes, your own children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren, but they're the children at this church, both services. They're the children in this community, in this state, in this nation, and in this world. And we're going to try to look at that all of those levels as we talk about this morning. But before we do, I want to share a story with you guys on how basic this can be. How many of you guys are familiar with big brothers and big sisters? Good. Awesome. Great. When I looked, I saw there's headquarters in Portland, and I know there's one in Bend as well. I got an opportunity when I was in college to get involved with Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and I was back at William & Mary in Virginia, and they came onto our campus, I think, and they said, hey, we're looking for students who are in college to come and just spend an hour a week with some of the students in our local schools to be their big brother. And so what we're asking you to do is to consider adopting, really, right, a little brother or a little sister. Now, I will tell you guys, my motivation at first was pretty selfish. I was like, I never had a little brother. I love a little brother. I had 2 younger sisters, and so I was like, this is great. I'll get a chance to spend some time with a little guy. And so I said, I'm in. And so I crammed into my college schedule, which was a little bit intense, an hour a week to go spend time with a little boy named Matthew. Now, let me tell you about Matthew. I got assigned to Matthew, and I learned pretty quickly that Matthew and his family were originally from the Eastern European countries and made their way here a couple generations ago. And things were going pretty well until Matthew's father found himself in prison. Once Matthew's father went to prison, as you might imagine, Matthew's behavior started to change, both at home and at school. And what I was told is that he was a little bit violent at times in school. He didn't like when things were taken from him. His attention, his focus wasn't there. His grades started to drop, and so his mother enrolled him in this program, and the poor kid got assigned to me. So I go out to Matthew, and I say, well, I've never done this before. I actually had to borrow a friend's car to even get out there. I didn't have a car. I didn't have a bike in college. So I borrowed my friend's car, and I go out there, and I get assigned to go out and hang out with Matthew during a recess. Now, when I'm first told about this, I'm picturing like Billy Madison. I'm like, this is going to be amazing, right? So I go out, and I find myself just standing next to this young man who's never met me in his life. And right off the bat, he starts introducing me to his friends as his big brother. I'm like, I don't deserve this at all. Like, I'm just here. I'm your buddy. I'm going to be alongside you. And that's what I was. That's what I did. For weeks, I showed up with him at recess and stood next to him. Hung out with him, played what they played. But I was just there for him. He wasn't alone. And you could see it on his face. Now, as time went on, my schedule changed, his schedule at school changed, and so I found myself in a computer lab with him at one point, and all I had to do was just sit next to him as he's doing these computer exercises and learning, and I was just encouraging him and just sat there with him. Later, found myself during library time, and I would go, this is probably the 2nd year I did it, and I would hang out with him and sit next to him and read with him during library time. I remember 2 years in, I think it might have even been after that, I stayed in touch with his mom. And one day, I think she emailed me, and she said, hey, Scott, I want you to know the impact you've had on Matthew. She said, when you started to meet with him, he was taking things from their students, he was hitting them if they would take it from him, he was doing the same thing with his sibling, grades were dropping, and everything has changed since you've started to hang out with him in 2 years. And I'm telling you this story for one reason. I want you guys to understand that during that 2 years, I did nothing profound for that young man. I don't think I told him anything important. I was an unbaptized believer. All I did was show up. 2 years. 1 hour a week. The only thing I did for this young man was just show him that he was loved and cared for. Wasn't profound, wasn't significant. I didn't do anything special. I was there. And as you think about what it looks like to care for children, and these next 3 categories we're going to talk about, that's what I'm calling you to do. Not to be qualified, not to be an expert, not to be particularly profound or important, but just to be present. Why? Because Jesus did. Right? Great answer to any question. Because Jesus said so. Because Jesus did. And Jesus said this. At that time, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Who's the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" He called a child whom he put among them and said, "Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like children, you'll never enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever becomes humble like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me." I picture the disciples here like asking Jesus, "Hey, Jesus, who's the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" I'm trying to picture what they might have been thinking, like what answer they expected of Jesus. Like, is he going to say God? Is he going to say him? Is he maybe going to give us a clue of which one of us is more important? And Jesus doesn't do any of that. He grabs a child and he puts a child in the middle, which you just didn't do, and says, "I want you to change to become like him." He didn't say himself. He didn't even say the Father. He looks at a child and says, "I want you to become like a child." But the first step towards caring for kids is you got to change. Did you guys notice Jesus said that? Change. You need to change. I need to change. There's something inside of us that needs to change. You're thinking, "Oh, here we go. The pastor is telling us to change again." Yes. Absolutely. Jesus calls all of us, myself absolutely included, to change, to be growing, to be expanding, and to change every single day. You don't believe Jesus? John F. Kennedy put it this way: change is the law of life. And those who look only to the past or the present are certain to miss the future. Change is life. And for many of you, you've lived long enough to know that that is true. We make plans, and those plans often change. Change happens. Benjamin Franklin, I love how he put it. When you're finished changing, you're finished. When you're finished changing, you're finished. Life is change. It is growth. It is expansion. And for Jesus, he said, "I want you to change, and I want you to become like children." Now, this fascinates me. We spend a lot of our time as adults wanting to change children to become like us. Right? We want them to grow up. I get that. But Jesus says, "I want you to become like them. I want you to become like a kid." So what does that look like? How do we do that? I've seen lots of anti-aging products on the market. Not one of them does this. To actually make us become like children. It's an interior thing. It's a heart thing. It's a mind thing. So I want to focus on this morning are 4 characteristics of kids. 4 kids based on experience of what Jesus said about humility. 4 characteristics of kids and how we can try to mirror that in our lives. One is kids are innocent. They say the most remarkable things because they haven't been contaminated by the world. There's this innocence and purity to them. They're trusting. They're incredibly trusting. My 2-year-old's at this stage where he literally, if I'm within a 5-foot proximity of the couch, he walks off the edge of it because he expects me to catch him. And I'm like, "You can't do that." No, because what if I'm not here? He just trusts I'm going to catch him. It's what kids do. They just trust. So if we're going to become like children, we need to become more trusting. 3, kids are obedient. Kids are obedient. And we know this is true because whenever we see a kid who's not, you always will hear people say, "Oh, that unruly child. That undisciplined child." Generally, we think about kids, we think about children who are obedient. Adults, not so much, but kids, right, are obedient. And last, Jesus said they're humble. Jesus said specifically, you need to be humble like a child. So how do we do that? How do we return to innocence? Okay? The answer is not easy, and we can't do it alone. What is innocence? It's a lack of guile or corruption. It is a purity. So for those of us maybe who've come on the other side, we've been corrupted a little bit by the world. We are no longer pure. How do you go back there? The Bible tells us to do it this way. Psalms 51:10. "Create in me a clean heart, O God, and put a new and right spirit within me." We can say it. We can sing it. Literally say, God, I want you to put a new heart. Clean this thing up inside me. Clean this thing up inside of me. And if you know people who have gone through particularly challenging parts of their life, particularly people who have gone through addiction, it's amazing when you see them on the other side and they will literally articulate to you how they feel different, clean, new, pure, fixed, washed because of what Jesus did, not because of anything they did. That's what this is all about. But you've got to ask God to help you do it, to return back to that state of innocence and purity. How do we return to trust? This is a tough thing. Trust is a big deal. Trust is a lot like character, right? Builds over a period of years. Takes a lot of time to build trust up. And then it's shattered in seconds. In seconds, in moments, trust can be completely and totally gone. How do we return to a position of trusting God and trusting each other? The Bible tells us this in James 4:8. Draw near to God, and He will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Draw near to God, and He will draw near to you. You want to trust God? Just try it. Let me give you an illustration of that. I need a volunteer. Have any volunteers? You're like, I don't even know what I'm volunteering for. You guys are smart. Good job. All right. So here's what I need a volunteer for. How many of you guys have heard of a trust fall? Good. You want to be a volunteer? Just kidding. Okay. So what we're going to do is a trust fall. And you can be volunteer to do one of two things. One, you can do that trust fall into me, and I will catch you. I'm not going to drop you in front of all these people. Or I'll put my money where my mouth is. If you want to come up here, I'll fall into you and have you catch me. Okay? So, do I have a volunteer to do a trust fall up here in front of all of you? Awesome. Janice is in. You trust me. Good.
I do trust you.
Good. Awesome. Great. Or do you want me to fall into you? I'm just kidding. Come on up. 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 You want to do it? You want to do it right here?
I don't care.
Okay. And just put the arms up. I'm standing right behind you. Whenever you're ready, let me know. Okay? Good job. I got you. Now, how did that feel?
I knew you'd catch me.
Good. Very good. Was there any moment that was scary?
No.
Up high. Good job. That's awesome. If you've ever done that, though, you know there's this feeling. At first, you're like, I can't catch myself. Once you start, right, like someone has to catch you. But the feeling I remember of doing that, I've done that a lot, is not the little like slightly scary feeling like there's no one behind me and how am I going to stop this? It's the feeling I remember when I'm caught. And it's that feeling that I think that James is trying to get at. The God's right there. Jesus said, I knew you were going to catch me. And if we want to trust God, we just have to say, I know, God, you're going to catch me. I'm going to trust you that you are going to catch me. It's what kids do, and it's what Jesus calls us to do. Return to obedience. How do we return to obedience? This is a real basic one. I don't agree with everything that Nike's done, but they said this very well. Just do it. We're just called to be obedient to the Lord. John 14:15 puts it very basically. If you love me, you'll keep my commandments. God says, if you love me, you're going to do what I tell you to do. That's why I've given you this long, incredible book that you call the Bible. Just do it. If we want to be like children, we need to return to a position of obedience to the Lord. Humility. When we think about being humble, I want you to think about this in terms of two directions or two ways. One is to humble ourselves, so we take ourselves and look at ourselves lower. And the second thing is we look at others and we look at them as higher. This comes right out of Philippians 2:3-4. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility regard others as better than yourselves. Let each of you look not to your own interests, but to the interests of others. So as we think about ourselves and what we should do, don't do it because of our own drive, our own view of ourself, our conceit, but do it as we consider others as better than ourselves. And note that it's better than us, not on the same plane. Better than us. Kids do this very well, right? Almost naturally, we'll look to adults, those older themselves, as big kids. As adults, you must be better and more mature. And we're like, oh, no, you have no idea. Right? But that's what we're called to do, to return to a position where you look at others and say, you are better than I am. Once you've done that, you guys all feel changed? A little bit? Maybe you got to work on it? Once you've gotten to that point, Jesus said, I want you to welcome a child. Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. Think about this. When you welcome a child, you welcome Jesus Christ. What does this welcome look like? I love this picture because it shows this lady with a big smile and open arms. That's what welcome looks like. Open arms, open door, open home, open ears, and open eyes. And as we do this for kids, we are welcoming Jesus Christ. Welcome is a powerful word. This word is dekomai, and it means to receive, means to accept, welcome, and I love the last part, entertain. Entertain a child. Just make a child laugh. And if you've heard the laugh of a child, you know that is its own reward. Just entertain, receive, welcome. This word can literally be translated as taking something into one's hand. Take a child as if you're taking it into your own hand, as your little brother, as your little sister. One more thing you should know about this word. The root of this word, dekomai, is very similar to the root of the word dekios, which meant right hand. So this hand, this right hand in Greek is a dekios. And the right hand's the power hand. Okay, how many of you guys are lefties? How many lefties we got here? Good number. Awesome. Thank God for lefties, right? We've come a long way in our recognition of lefties. Back then, everything right and powerful was done for the right hand. Other stuff was done with the left hand. I'm going to leave it at that. Okay? Now, fortunately, we've come a long way in our understanding of that. But back then, every time you read in the Bible about the right hand of God, the powerful hand of God, that's the right hand. And so what Jesus is saying here is, I want you to welcome kids into your power hand. I want you to put them at your right side, your important side, because they are. That's how I want you to welcome kids. Now, every week, what I'm going to try to do is go through opportunities for you to do that. Today and this coming year, you'll notice in your bulletin, you're going to have every week a sheet that you can fill out if you want, of ways you want to do this in the coming year, starting with our own ministry here at the church. The children we have at this church, both services, are essential to this church. Essential. They're the future of God's plan for the world, and they are the future of this church. And so working with them, being with them, loving on them is absolutely essential for us, and we need you. And I can always say that to you. We need you to be there for the children in this church. Now, I want to let you know how easy it is. Okay? Just like when I showed up at Big Brothers Big Sisters, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. You can kind of do the similar thing here. We'll provide you the curriculum of what you're going to teach them. You don't have to be able to tell them all 66 books of the Bible. You don't have to be someone who's a scholar in the Bible. We're going to give you the curriculum so you know exactly what to teach them. The only thing you got to do is do that thing I did in college. Show up. Just your willingness to be there and to be around them. That's enough. And yet it changes the lives of children and people. Now, for those of you who are still a little bit leery, maybe a little uncomfortable with this, you can start out as an assistant. We have teachers, and we have teachers' helpers or teachers' assistants. So maybe you're like, I've never done this before. I don't really know what to do. You can start out as an assistant and watch someone else who knows how to do it and just follow them around. So I would really encourage you to think about doing this in the coming year. First or second service, or Wednesday night, or VBS, and the list goes on and on. If you want to do that, you can fill it out on that sheet, and you can hand that to me if you want, or you can put it in the offering boxes on your way out. But that's not the only opportunity on there. The next one is our Good News Club. Every Wednesday, from 1:25 to 2:25, there's a group of us that goes out to Sunrise Elementary School and is there for approximately 10 to 12 kids right now, one of whom accepted Jesus Christ the week before Christmas. Okay? All we do is show up with a curriculum we don't create. And God literally does the rest. Like, literally. So if that's something, and I know the 1:25, 2:25, it's a tough time. I get it for those of you who work. So if you can't do it, I get it. But I'd really encourage you, if you were able to join us, even if you're not so comfortable with the teaching role, but you just want to go out there and sit next to them, that goes such a long way. I got an adult sitting next to me. I got an adult that's asked me how my day is. I got an adult that remembered my name. Really, really encourage you to come out and join us on a Wednesday from 1:25 to 2:25. And it really is 1:25 to 2:25 and we're out. The school keeps us on a very good, tight schedule, and I would love to have you guys come out there with us. Next thing, maybe you don't want to do that, you'd rather go to Ecuador. Go for it. Please go out to this orphanage that will change your life. It will literally change your life to be in the lives of these kids that you think you're going to change theirs. They need to know. They need to know. They are valued in the eyes of God and in your eyes. And if you can go October 10th through the 25th, go out with our team, please, I would really encourage you to take this trip. Stay in Shell. Beautiful hostel. It's an incredible environment. And go and work in that orphanage. Work outside the orphanage if you want to. But just to let these kids know that they are so dearly loved. And I know this says sign up was by January 1st. We can find room. Okay? Because I know we're a few days after that. We can make room. And if funding's an issue, please let us know. Talk to me, talk to Ben. We would be happy to walk you through what it looks like to fundraise. I've been amazed at what people will do to support these trips, either because they can't do it on their own, because of life stage or finances or whatever it is. Please, I would encourage you, don't let the money stop you. Take this trip to love on these kids and to help this orphanage in Ecuador. And if you have any questions, please let me know, let Ben know. Really excited about that trip. Now, there's a word I'm going to use repeatedly today and over the next 3 weeks after this. And it's an L word. One of the most important things you can say to a child is nothing. Nothing. I literally can't tell you one significant or important thing I said to Matthew. I don't think I did. I was an unbaptized Christian that wasn't doing things right every single day, every single week. And yet God used me to change his life because I listened. I listened. That's it. We got 2 ears, 1 mouth, and we overuse the mouth. The Bible says 288 times, listen. It says God listens. God says, listen to me. And he says, listen to each other. So as you think about doing this, working with kids, what do I say? What do I do? I'm not qualified. You have these. And if you have these, you're actually qualified to do every single one of the things we're going to be talking about today and over the next 3 weeks. Just listen. Just someone in their life that thinks they're important, that thinks they matter, that wants to hear their story. Just wants to hear their story. Just go and listen. Now, as you contemplate working for kids, one thing I see quite a bit with people who work for kids or work with kids, they'll say, these kids are different. And when I say different, I want you to understand this is not different in a derogatory or negative sense at all. What I mean by different is, yeah, that child, it's not you. And it's not me. And that's actually a very good thing. I look at my own 2 kids. Neither one of them are exactly like me. Thank God. Both of these kids are this crazy mix of me and my wife and God, and we just hope not to mess it up. They're different. They're not me. So I can't look at them and the way they relate to the world and even listen to them like they're me. Like they're going to react to the world like I do. They're not. They're different. They're not you and they're not your children. A lot of people will treat other kids like they're their own kids. Well, my kids wouldn't have reacted that way. Fair enough. They're not your kids. Unless they're your kids, right? But if you're working with other kids, they're not your kids. They're actually kids that were created by 2 totally different people. And that's okay. That's a good thing. And guess who else's kids they are? God's kids. Which means that they deserve the same amount of attention as everyone else. 2 things you have to understand as you work with kids in the world today. Children today may have been raised a little bit differently than you. Okay? Let me share with you 2 statistics. 40% of the children born today in the United States are born to unwed mothers. I don't bring that up out of judgment. I bring that up because that is just a very real fact. And you know what this means? that those 40% deserve to be treated and loved just like the other 60%. That's the only thing this means. But as we work with these kids, we have to understand they might have been raised in a slightly different environment. 33% of the children live without their biological father. 1/3 of the kids today live without a father at home. So guys, we really need you. Really need you. We need you in those classrooms down there in the children's ministry. We need you out at the Good News Club. We need you. These kids need you to have a voice of a man as well as a woman in their lives. Again, these statistics, I don't bring it up to argue about them, to talk about why. That's not the point. The point is the recognition that these 40% deserve the same treatment as the other 60%. The 33% deserve the same love and attention that the other 67% receive. And it's up to us to do it. To become like children and to care for these children. We're going to take communion. And as we think about taking communion, I want you to think about it with a slightly different view today. When we commune with what Jesus Christ did so long ago, I think it actually helps us become more like children. If you think about what Jesus did for us, I've explained what Jesus done to people of any age. Little kids, adults, seniors, and I'm amazed how basic and easy it is to explain to a kid that Jesus gave his life for you. A 6-year-old can understand that. Oh, that's what love looks like. Someone giving their life for you. And that's what we remember as we pray and prepare to take communion this morning. God, we thank you so much for who you are. You're a father who sent a son. And the son said change. And the son said become like children. The son said become like me, Jesus. And then that son went to a cross. We remember that now as we take communion. Jesus, that you gave your life for us. As we take the bread, we remember the body of Jesus broken for us. As we take the cup of juice, we remember the blood of Jesus poured out for us and for all. Thank you so much. And it's in your name we do this and pray. Amen.